excellent journalistic organisation prone to making stupid mistakes.
But by this time, the BBC's critics had already lined up to condemn the mistake as much more than just that on the BBC's own news channel. After the resignation news broke on Monday morning, the first person on the line was Kelvin Mackenzie, formerly Rupert Murdoch's top tabloid editor, and then the boss of a rival radio company which wailed against the BBC's funding for years.
When you start doing that to the President of the United States, what are you doing to somebody cleaning a window in Preston? You can't be trusted on that.
And the next to react to the breaking news on the BBC was another of its loudest critics in the UK and a former commercial rival, David Elstein.
I think it's an opportunity to bring in. I don't criticise the BBC over its straightforward political coverage. I think they probably do their best in a very difficult area. But I do blame them in looking at some of the social issues facing our country and then getting on the wrong side of almost every argument.
Now, the notion that coverage of issues should be based on public opinion at the BBC was rebutted later on BBC Radio by a former Conservative Party politician and former chair of the BBC Trust, Lord Chris Patten.
I don't think anybody's complacent around the difficulties of covering this difficult, dangerous world as well as possible. But I don't think that we should allow ourselves to be bullied into thinking that the BBC is only any good if it reflects the prejudice of the last person who shouted at us.
And there was a fair bit of shouting with the Northern Irish host Stephen Nolan, that he himself had made a 10-part series on the topic for the BBC last year.
With respect to the BBC, just as we would any politician or anyone else, I've spoken to a number of journalists within the BBC who are really uncomfortable about this relationship with Stonewall. They don't think that they can talk. But now we have someone to talk. She's just left the BBC. This is wrong to speak now.
Trans rights issue and Gaza coverage and other things were also in that report on editorial failings at the BBC by the outside advisor Michael Prescott, which kicked off this crisis and sent lead to the Daily Telegraph. But last Monday, the departing BBC News CEO Deborah Turner made this point forcefully.
BBC News is not institutionally biased.
Critics of BBC governance and management are now saying that the BBC's real problem with impartiality is not in its news, but in its governance and monitoring that's been skewed by political influence. A 13-strong BBC board currently includes business leaders and lawyers, but only 3 people with any substantial record in journalism. And a key committee that looks after editorial standards includes Sir Robbie Gibb, a former journalist turned political appointee during Boris Johnson's time as Prime Minister, after he'd served as a PR man for the Conservative Party Prime Minister, Theresa May. Now, Michael Prescott, the former advisor to the Editorial Standards Committee who was the author of that now notorious dossier, was also a PR man for a company that links to the Conservative Party for 9 years. On her podcast, The News Agents, Emily Maples claimed this week that